Ladies and gentlemen, we are in a 2004 Mustang GT. And yes, it's automatic. And also, this Mustang has been owned by teenagers only until my buddy that's sitting next to me, Riley, got his hands on it. And it has right now 172,000 miles on it. And it shows, you know, it's been to colleges, it's been to a bunch of other places, stood outside pretty much for most of its life, which explains the condition of the car, but it still runs pretty good. Even though I think it has a little bit of an exhaust leak, it still moves with a purpose. Now, one thing that I do notice right away is that the suspension is all wallowy. You know, you've driven so many cars that have lower mileage on it and also aren't Mustangs from the 90s, which still have the solid rear axle. So in this case, you really feel that weight move around a lot. And of course, this is automatic, 4-speed automatic, no paddle shifters, no way to really select the gear, but just waiting on the kick down and go. The sound of that transmission, man, that reminds me of my freaking Grand Marquis. Brakes are actually adequate. The weight transfer again. So the only downside is just to have to wait on that freaking kick down, because you can't get on it now. You have to wait until you're straightened in. Man, it pulls pretty good. Now from factory, this came with 260 horsepower out of its 4.6 liter V8. Now 2-valve per cylinder. My 2005 Mustang, which is a year after this one, is considered a 3-valve because it had 3 valves per cylinder. Now of course you could get the Cobra and the Mach, which had 32 valves, which is 4 valves per cylinder, but this one makes 260 horsepower and 302 pound-feet of torque. So it is plenty of grunt to get you going, especially if you're a teenager. This will get you to trouble, no problem whatsoever. I love the fact that there's a teenager that drives a car like this, because when I had my first car, it was a Peugeot 305 with a 1.4 liter engine, 4-speed manual. And one of the things that I've always liked about Mustangs is that you are under 2,000 RPM when you drive 60 miles an hour. Like right now, we're at 60, we're about 1,800 RPM, completely fine. Another one of the things that I love about Mustangs is that if the performance figures of 0 to 60 in about 6 seconds, most of the people in an automatic, and the quarter mile of around 14 seconds for most people, if that's not enough, the aftermarket's got you. And these engines, they can live up to about 400 wheel horsepower quite nicely. And that's what I love about Mustangs in a nutshell, is that the aftermarket support is so freaking great. If I get here to a stop over here. Now what we're gonna do over here is just gonna go mat it from a dig and see what happens. It kicks nicely, man. Yes, boys. That is what I love about Mustangs too, is that even though this is an older Mustang, it still does that thing. It still, well, it didn't really hook, but it still dances, baby. I freaking love it. Now, New Edge Mustang came out in 1999, refresh of the SN95 platform, which came out in 1994. I love the styling. This is like when that Ford decided to do the hard lines, and it just sets it off from the cars from the 90s, because the 90s it was all bubbly goodness. This car on the outside is completely and utterly with the times, because even now you see the hard lines are still a thing. Now one thing that did not change though with that refresh was the interior, and here you can see it's dated. It's definitely still the 90s bubbly goodness, and you can see that in the symmetry of the dash as well, because it's all freaking rounded. Like my 2005, none of that anymore. It's all hard lines for days on that car, inside and out. This one, hard lines for days on the outside, inside, not so much. But I have a history with the New Edge Mustang. My wife had a V6 automatic, and just to be behind the wheel of a New Edge again, to see this dash, to see the automatic shifter, it just brings a smile to my face. It really does. Of course, another thing on the interior are these seats. They are seats that have 172,000 miles on them. So side bolstering is non-existent, but it's still a comfortable place to be. I mean, it's definitely cruiser status right here. Let's see what we can do over here. Got a little bit of kick down. Woo! This kicks you in the second gear, baby. Oh man. You feel everything that you're doing. So let's talk about the exterior styling on the new Edge Mustang just a little bit more. This particular one has a Mach 1 chin spoiler on it, which sets the car off from the normal car, and it's also the perfect upgrade because the Mach 1 still retains the GT front bumper. Now, of course, over here, you do not have the shaker, but you do have the hood scoop, which is non-functional, but you know, that's part of the course of cars of this era. And even nowadays, they do the same thing. That second gear in this automatic transmission is pretty darn long. But it does drive nice. It does drive very, very nice. Now, when I got on it earlier, I did feel kind of the car make it kind of a sidestep. That's probably because the suspension is older and it just can't absorb that shock very much, but it also adds to that old car experience that you have, because this is still solid rear axle, so you still have that old school stuff going on with this car. So the styling of the rear end, I've always liked among these, because the original SN95 was just too bubbly. This has those freaking slats in the taillights. Love it. Also, the Mustang scripture on the rear bumper, great look as well. And I think when it comes down to the side profile, you can't really go wrong either, because it still has that signature Mustang look to it. Just very modern. And it's still, to this day, fits this current traffic. Because if you look at this traffic, it's all hard lines. Getting on it slowly. You hear that exhaust leak, but it is not affecting the performance on this car one bit. It is going the way it's supposed to, and I freaking love it. Now, if I have to come up with the conclusion on the new Edge Mustang, I think it's going to be an easy one. These seats have zero side bolstering. They're also old seats, but the aftermarket's got you. Power could be better. The aftermarket's got you. Styling, I like him. But even if you don't like him, the aftermarket's got you. Oh goodness, man. This is freaking great. If it brings a smile to your face, that is all you freaking need. For sure, 100%. And this car does it, and does it in spades. Ooh. Kick down and go. Riley, thank you so much for letting me drive your new Edge Mustang. Love the experience. And for you, I hope you enjoyed this car review of this 172,000 mile Mustang GT. And I'll see you guys on the flip side. So one thing that I love about Mustangs, they have that quarter window that allows you to see. Everything rattles. That's freaking great. I love it. And it still smells the same too. Like, this interior smells exactly the same as my wife's V6 did. That is so awesome. Oh man, it is hilarious.